Kurt, we're having a technical issue with some of the World Bank colleagues. It seems that there's some blockage with those users and they can't connect. What can we do?
Okay, maybe they share off the screen or the message, specifically what it's saying.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We're just going to start in a couple of minutes. We're having some issues with some of the colleagues from the World Bank that we're just trying to resolve. Just a couple more minutes and we're going to start. Okay, colleagues, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you so much for being here with us in this webinar. This is a webinar that makes part of the Gender Equality in the Business Sector series, co-organized by different platforms that work with the private sector at UNDP, the Business for Gender Equality Platform, the Connecting Business Initiative, and the Business Call to Action. And it's co-organized with the IFC, the colleagues that make part of the group, of the Tackling Childcare group that have joined us and that are here with us today. We know that the COVID-19 is disrupting our lives in so many ways, in a very different levels. And the private sector is not escaping from that impact. That's why we want to open this conversation, a very honest conversation with the private sector to identify what are the challenges they're living and also to identify what are the actions they're putting in place to protect their workers and protect, let's say, the most vulnerable links in their supply chains. That's why we have an awesome panel today. I'm going to share my screen now. And I want to present you this fantastic panel. Here with us is Luciana Trindade de Aguiar. She's the head for the Business Call to Action platform at UNDP. With us also Karen Smith, Program Manager of the Connecting Business Initiative, a platform led by UNDP and OCHA. It's also here with us Rudaba Sera Nasir. She's the global lead for the Employment and Childcare group and the Global Gender Business Group at IFC. Also with us today, Vinita Paunikar, Vice President of Release Engineering and Release Management at Oracle Corp. Arancha Diaz-Jadot, Director of Sustainable Innovation and Diversity for Telefonica. Aneta Petrovska-Rusomarowski, Head of Human Resources and Organization at EVN North Macedonia, and Sophia Greenwalds, Co-founder and Director of AfriPads. As you can see, we have an amazing panel today. The idea is to have a very, very informal conversation on the challenges and some of the experiences that these companies are putting in place, and also try to inspire you to start and to put in place a gender responsive action. Our journey today, we will have a short presentation on the interconnections of COVID-19, gender and the private sector, why this is an important topic to you. Also, then we will have a presentation by the IFC on the options and the different strategies to implement employer-supported childcare solutions. And then we will start the conversation with the companies from the challenges they're living in the different industries. As said, we will have Oracle, Telefonica, EVN, AfriPads. Then we will have a short sharing session, and then we will have closing remarks from the Business Call to Action and the Connecting Business Initiative. During the presentation that we will have in a couple of minutes, you will be invited to fill a poll with some questions related to the topics that we will approach during the presentation. This is to make this webinar a little bit more interactive with the audience, so we can share the results with you at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's move forward. This is the content of the presentation. We will have, or we will discuss first about the COVID-19 disruption and the interconnections between the economic effects and inequalities. Then we're going to explore why a gender responsive COVID-19 action matters to companies, why this is important to you. Then we will give you a bit of inspiration of some of the gender responsive actions that have been put in place by companies. And then we will share with you an initiative that we have put in place at UNDP, the COVID-19 private sector facility, that will give you an idea of how you can engage in further actions and responses at the global level. So you know that the COVID-19 keeps spreading all over the world. We have seen now that we have close to 2 million cases. This is something that has had different impacts, let's say, across regions, across countries. And as I said before, it has impacted us, humanity, at very different levels, you know? So the first and foremost, or let's say, deep impact that it's having right now, the pandemic, which is closely associated to the measures that have been adopted by governments and recommended by WHO in regards to keep physical distance, what we call the social distancing measures. Some of the countries are in total lockdown, some of the countries have partial lockdowns, but in any case, we're experiencing a massive reduction of economic activity across sectors. The forecast, or the estimated forecast of growth for the world and for some of the main trade partners of many countries in the world, you know, are absolutely negative. These are some estimations, and we hope the world will grow at a negative rate of 1.5%. And what we can see is that it is disrupting supply chains, it is disrupting the economy, but it will probably deepen the existing inequalities, including gender inequalities, and we're going to see why. As I said before, industries have been impacted in so many ways, from the commercial and aerospace industry, or the oil and gas that have been deeply affected, to retail, logistics, and consumer services. At some level, all the industries have been feeling the negative effects of the pandemic. The other thing that it's been experienced by companies, it's the and it's measures that I mentioned. It's close of consumers changing the behaviors to incentivize specifically the purchase of so many items which are related to health supplies. We can see that an increase about of 60% of health supplies is experienced across different markets. So why this is important for the companies, why gender responsive action matters to you. As I said before, industries, companies at different sizes and levels are feeling the effects of the pandemic. A survey conducted by Mercer establishes that close to a third of all the companies that have responded to the survey, which are close to 2,000, are experiencing a significant impact, since most employees need to work on site. So a big part of those workers are working from home or are unable to work from home. So this is impacting the P&L of the companies in a very substantive manner. It is too early to assess what would be the impact of SMEs and some of the most vulnerable parts of the global value chain. But we can say that this will have a deep impact on SMEs, on women-owned businesses, and the most vulnerable segments of the society, informal workers, migrant workers, migrant women, and other segments of the population. Across some of the surveys that have been conducted to date, we can see that especially SMEs are feeling a deep effect. For instance, a survey conducted in China established that a third of SMEs only had cash to cover fixed expenses for a month. That's what they said on February. 60% of them were back in business by mid-March, but in the end, they are saying that they are facing many challenges due to reduced market demand. The situation is the same in Italy or Argentina, where close to 70% of SMEs have been affected because of a drop of demand and because they have had many difficulties in their supply chains. And this will translate easily in the reduction of revenues and the reduction of production levels and the increase of idle capacity. And why it's important to look into SMEs to establish the correlation with women, because women are overrepresented in so many sectors that have been highly affected by the pandemic, but also because they work on SMEs in a high proportion in many regions. We can see that the proportion of women-owned SMEs per 100,000 SMEs, it's higher in Europe and Central Asia and the East region and the Pacific. So we can say that there are roughly 9 million formal women-owned SMEs globally. There are no statistics to establish what is the number of informal SMEs, but what we can say is that those women working in SMEs have limited social protection, limited safety nets, and the reduction of sales and clients and the difficulties in the supply chain will translate in a higher probability of bankruptcy. And this will bring a very, very hard effect on women and their families. As said before, some of the industries that have been hardest hit have also an overrepresentation of women in the workforce. For instance, in the air and travel industry, close to 70% of workers are women and are flight attendants or travel agents. And that is the same for the insurance industry, where 56% of workers at entry-level positions are women. Also, we have a very similar situation for the apparel industry, where close to 68% of the workforce are women. So what we can say is that SMEs play a central role of the economic and productive tissue of societies. They provide between 50 to 60% of value added. And the estimation said that those SMEs that probably will close because of the COVID, close to 95% of them will never be back in operation. That's why it's so critical to protect supply chains and to protect the weakest links of the supply chain. Another key data that we can bring is the cash crunch that has been triggered by the COVID-19. Estimations from JP Morgan a few years ago, that's through a survey they conducted to more than 600,000 small businesses in the US, established that in average, they only had 27 days of cash buffer. This is to say that we have to keep meeting the expenses, keep paying, but we don't have any income. In average, they have only 27 days of cash available. And if you can see here, there are some industries that have even a lower range. Restaurants, repair and maintenance, retail are the most vulnerable, let's say, industries or sectors of economic activity among SMEs. The other topic that it's absolutely critical is related to the possibility to access financial resources, because women in general face a larger number of challenges, which are closely related to financial and non-financial barriers. And as you can see here, SMEs have an estimated financing gap of $5.2 trillion globally. And women hold $1.7 trillion of that gap. And as we can see, the most concerning situation, it's recorded by East Asia and the Pacific. So it is critical to address those structural barriers impeding the access to financial resources, to cover liquidity needs, to cover, all the different obligations these SMEs have. Here, you just can take a look at the different barriers, but as I said before, many of those barriers are related to non-financial factors, such as domestic responsibilities. Women bear the care work, the unpaid care work at homes. They also have a higher probability of mortality. Let's say their companies have a higher probability of mortality. They also have higher levels of informality. So this is important because behind those SMEs, we have people working in there. 2 out of 3 people working for SMEs it is estimated that 2 out of 3 people works for SMEs in the OCDE countries. And you can say that the proportion at micro firms and small firms, it's really high. So those are the typical segments that should be targeted. The other thing that I already mentioned is the level of informality. There is a high level of informality across the globe, but it's even higher in some cases for women, such as in developing countries where the level of informality could even reach close to 90% of the population or even higher. So that's something to look into it, because as I said before, many of them have no access to social protection or any sort of social safety net. So they are in need to be protected. In general, what we can say is that COVID-19 is disrupting the way we work in a very, very profound way, and it's impacting especially women. We are recording increased mental health issues and anxiety, the double burden of care responsibilities, and the blurred line between work life and family life. During home-based work, it's affecting primarily women. There's an increased risk of intimate partner violence during the lockdowns, because there is some sort of, let's say, there is no possibility to break those power imbalances between inside the households when you just make your regular activities on a daily basis. Here, you're confined with the aggressor, and this increases the probability of suffering from violence. There's also, in general, for both men and women, a situation of job uncertainty and an increased fear for the future, that it's impacting emotionally people. And all this combination of factors has a deep effect on the levels of productivity. That it's why this matters for companies, because it is impacting also your operations and your core business. And there's also an increased patterns of discrimination of COVID-19 patients. We are looking into these situations across the globe. increased discrimination of health workers, increased discrimination of so many persons that have been suffering from or that have been diagnosed from the COVID-19. Just related to the burden of care, just for you to have in mind, women, we make more than three times of unpaid care work compared to men. So this is important for you to have in mind, because the lockdowns, the social distancing measures, and this, as I said before, this blurred line between work and family life back in households, it's impacting deeply the situation of women. So then why we need to ensure a COVID-19 gender responsive action, because this is a multidimensional crisis. This is not only a health crisis. We know that it's an economic crisis, but we have discovered very recently that that is also a care crisis that has a lot of impact in the possibilities of both companies, employees, workers, suppliers. The other topic to have in mind is that the COVID-19 will intensify the existing economic inequalities and vulnerabilities. But what's important to have in mind is that the cost of the response is not equally distributed among the different segments. So we have segments in higher vulnerability, as I said before, SMEs, women-owned businesses, informal workers, migrant workers, rural populations living in poverty. Those are the type of segments that will be hardest hit by the crisis. It is also important to have in mind this change of the household dynamics related to violence and the way this could affect the operations. And in the end, the key message here is that a failure to adopt a gender perspective in the response will have a huge impact on future recovery beyond the specific effects on women. And that's why it's so important to mobilize the capacities, the resources of private sector, because we need to bring on board your capabilities, not only your financial resources, but your capacity to innovate, to bring new technologies, to find new solutions to address this crisis. So a bit of inspiration, what we have seen is that it's important for companies to incorporate a gender responsive action in, let's say, three big areas: in the workplace, in the marketplace, and the community. And if we can see what are the type of actions that we can put in place according to the, let's say, a stage of the crisis, we know that probably this will be a protracted crisis. We have different levels of the crisis between the countries, which is closely related to the appearance of the first case and then the evolution and the expansion of the outbreak. So we need to prepare actions to prepare that response, to respond, and then to recover and increase business resilience. So we can say that at the workplace, if we incorporate the gender lenses, the most important thing is to ensure the health and well-being of both male and female workers, including the contractors, irrespective of the type of contract. In the marketplace, it is so crucial to protect incomes and jobs of those highly vulnerable stakeholders. As I said before, MSMEs, women-owned businesses, and what should be done is to enhance policies and operations, improve business models, and give targeted financial support. And also impact the community with non-commercial and commercial solutions. As I said before, you need to share your capabilities. You need to leverage your existing corporate social responsibility actions. You have the possibility to invest resources in new business models that will have triple impact: financial, social, and environmental return to address this crisis. So just to finish, these are some of the actions that companies have put in place across the three areas that I mentioned. They are implementing monitor checks of the health of the employees. They are distributing personal protective equipment. They are improving or giving universal access to health coverage or to paid sick leave. You are also putting in place working day reductions, anticipated paid vacations, the wage reduction of senior managers to compensate for the reductions of the possibility to work of some of the segments in the company. Also improved or universal family leave coverage, monitoring domestic violence situations and provide referral services to companies, improved measures of work-life balance. In the marketplace, as I said before, targeted financial support through grants or concessional credits with preferential interest rates and with preferential terms, the anticipated payment of invoices, the reduce of the payment time, of the processing time for payments. Also, some companies are exploring factoring as a potential solution to address the liquidity needs of those suppliers. Regarding customer protection, we are also seeing the temporary suspension of payments, the possibility to restructure the debts, the possibility of reduced fees of intermediation in some of the services that are provided by companies, or even freeze some prices. And regarding some market solutions, we are seeing the shift of business models. Some of the companies are now producing hand sanitizers, masks, and medical equipment. Some others are shifting the business model to provide products and services non-related to health. Some of the companies are already assessing what parts of the value chain can be digitized, and how you can incorporate technologies to keep operating. And also some of the companies are incorporating the gender lenses to produce products and services. And regarding CSR actions, the most easy way to engage is through campaigns, to raise the awareness of the customer base, of the employees, of the suppliers. Some of the companies are also sharing data, not only health data, also violence or data related to domestic violence. Also, probably the most part of the companies are making in-kind contributions, financial donations of medical equipment, health equipment, grants to social projects. Some of the companies are also engaging employees through social innovation sprints or challenges to produce solutions, or through corporate volunteering schemes. Some of you are even putting in place crowdfunding campaigns with your clients, with your employees and your suppliers. So how to engage? We have put in place at UNDP what we call the UNDP COVID-19 Private Sector Global Facility, where we have leveraged the capacities of the different platforms that we have across the organization working with the private sector, including the platforms that have joined or that are co-hosting this webinar, the Business for Gender Equality platform, the Business Call to Action, and also the Connecting Business Initiative. What we're putting in place is a coordinated mechanism to facilitate global transfer of knowledge, to facilitate a coordinated action, and to enable, the economic actors, either companies, business associations, to adapt very rapidly to the COVID-19 economy. These are some of the examples of the type of things we can work with you. We can help you to protect your workers. We can help you to protect your supply chain. We can help you to share solutions to the community to address the COVID challenges. And this is just a sample of the type of things that we can do. We can help you with employees' needs assessment, with suppliers' needs assessment, to scan potential opportunities, to develop non-commercial or commercial solutions to address the crisis. We can help you in the policies you're putting in place to ensure employee well-being. We can give some sort of advisory. We can engage you in some of the virtual sessions that we will have to discuss specific topics. We can also help you to address the liquidity needs of your suppliers through a global fund to address the liquidity needs of MSMEs and women-owned businesses with direct grants, with low interest rate credits, with guarantees or insurances. And we can also help companies to increase the resiliency and of the supply chain with a different package of programs, from suppliers development programs to business skills, virtual training, to development of inclusive business and access to market. And we can also support the digital transformation of your supply chains. So this is just my final message. We know companies have a different capacity. Some of you have more possibilities to, to make wide, or to put in place a wide range of actions, but either action, small or large, is important. And we need global solidarity, and the role the private sector could play in the response, it's absolutely critical. So thank you so much. And I'm going to close here my presentation, and I'll give the floor now to Rudaba Sarah Nasser. She's the global lead for employment and childcare for the Gender and Business Group of IFC. So Rudaba, please let me know if you can unmute your mic. Or we can do it here. Ah, you're there.
I'm here.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you.
Finally managed. Thank you so much, Diana, for this invitation and for sharing a wonderful context, and also focusing on the care crisis. I agree with you. We need to look at this as a care crisis as well. In fact, with the loss of childcare options and daycare and school closures, and employees trying to meet their new work and family obligations, this pandemic has exacerbated an already existing care crisis. But the good news is that employers and businesses have a role to play. And we know that employers who are urgently addressing the care needs of their employees during this emergency, especially of those in lower income settings, have better chances of achieving business sustainability, productivity, and profitability in the long run, especially once this crisis is averted, which I'm very hopeful and have full faith that we will get there. So what have we done over the last few weeks is to put together some guidance, interim guidance for employers in terms of what they can do to address this magnified care crisis during this pandemic. And if you can help me maybe navigate my slides, or should I just talk through it? That would be fantastic. Just let me know. And then I can say next slide, please. So I will share with you today.
Just a minute, Rudaba.
Okay,
Just to give you access for you to share your screen, Kurt.
I can't. I'm actually on my personal.
Ah, you can't because of your. Okay. I have to look into it. Okay. No worries, no worries. I'm just trying to
rely on you to kindly help me out with the slides.
Yeah, I will. Just keep talking and I will help you.
Yes, I will just. So today I wanted to produce this guidance note why childcare and family-friendly workplace policies are absolutely critical during this time. And then what guidance do we have for employers in terms of how they can comply with regulations, how they can support their employees, how they can access some resources meant for employers and parents to support home-based work, parenting, childcare, and most importantly, distance learning in the face of daycare and school closures. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Many of you might be already familiar with the social and economic case for childcare. We know that access to good quality childcare is good for children. It results in their healthy development, greater capacity to learn in school, and increased productivity in adulthood. But as Diana correctly pointed out, we do have a childcare crisis, yet only half of 3 to 5 year olds in developing countries participate in some form of early childhood care and education. And this number now with the pandemic has decreased even further as people have, as kids and access to formal, good quality early childhood care and education. We also know that it's good for women's employment. Evidence from the Caribbean, Latin American, and several OECD countries suggests that access to childcare can have a significant positive impact on women's employment rates and work hours. But at the same time, we know that it's not just a women's issue. When we survey men and ask them about childcare and family needs, they said that they would work less if they could spend more time with their children. So it's a family issue, it's a business issue, it's a community issue. And it's also good for economy. So we know that the value of unpaid care is estimated at 10 trillion or 13% of global GDP, and it could create 21 million jobs if just 2% of GDP was invested in the care economy in 7 developed countries. But I think most importantly for our colleagues on the line, who are primarily, I imagine, businesses and employers, there's a strong business case for employer-supported childcare. And we know this because we've done this research since 2016 in several countries around the world. And you can access all of this research on ifc.org/tacklingchildcare. And we know that companies around the world, family-friendly employers, are investing in childcare, and for several different reasons. They improve their recruitment and retention. Yes, Dana, I'm just sharing my slides with you. Let me know when you get them. Recruitment and retention, increased productivity, diversity, regulatory compliance. In many countries, there are directives and policies around this, and also international buyers require supporting family-friendly policies. Also, there are several different ways in which employers can actually support childcare. It's not just about on-site daycare facilities. There's a whole range of family-friendly policies, from less to more resource-intensive ones that employers can invest in, including backup and emergency care, childcare subsidies, extended hours care, resource and referral services, and also partnerships with local care providers and governments, which are becoming increasingly important during this pandemic. So you don't have to do this alone. There are a whole range of different options and solutions out there. So what does this look like within the context of COVID-19? We know that working parents and their employers are in an ever-changing work and care landscape. Working mothers are particularly impacted by this crisis. And as Diana pointed out in her presentation as well, that women are performing unpaid care and household work 3 to 10 times more than men, depending on which country they're in. So this is a particularly difficult situation for working mothers as they juggle school closures, distance learning, full-time work, those who are able to work during this crisis. And as I said, employers have an opportunity to step in and support families, which will in turn enhance their business sustainability and productivity. So this guidance note that we have produced, just published last week, actually is a companion to IFC's Global Guide for Employer-Supported Childcare, which we published in November, which has more detailed guidance on how to implement childcare and family-friendly policies. So this is this guidance note on COVID-19 and childcare is a companion to that. So if you want more information, please head to that more detailed guidance. It also, oh, perfect. I'm on slide number 7, please. Great, thank you. And it contains advice that's intended for companies and partners in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and assuring their employees that their family needs are taken care of. And also at the same time, I want to highlight that this is very high level guidance. And of course, contexts differ across countries, even across cities actually are responding differently to the pandemic. And I strongly encourage colleagues and clients to continue referring to recommendations from the World Health Organization and other specialized international organizations on this, and also look at not just federal and national guidelines, but also local and municipal and provincial level guidelines as well. So what are questions you can consider as an employer? Next slide, please. During this time, what are the current directives and guidance from the government that impact childcare and family-friendly policies? Do your current workplace policies provide sufficient support to employees and their families? What more can you do during this time? And are there any resources available? Next slide, please, and the next slide. So in terms of complying with the regulations that I mentioned, this is going to shift drastically across countries, even cities, provinces. So it's important to stay abreast and comply with whatever employment and childcare related protocols you have that are facing you. This might include, and this is the case in several countries, downright closure of care facilities, or offering care services to just essential workers. The important thing to do during this time is to keep open lines of communication to ensure employees understand requirements and actions and are also sharing their own concerns and needs with you. So whatever solutions you come up with are created in collaboration with your employees in consultation. And any guidance in terms of medical support, and financial support, whatever the government has in place, I think that is also important to keep in mind right now. And if employers think that in order to protect their business and their employees, they need to go above and beyond regulations to implement stricter measures, do that by all means. Next slide, please. And this is an important point which
you have 1 minute, Rudaba.
Which we discussed with UNICEF and ILO. Is that employers can engage with the governments, with parents and employer, business and membership organizations in terms of how they respond to the crisis during this time. So very quickly on responding to employee needs. Next slide, next slide. Employers can do this. They can provide essential care services to essential workers, particularly employers who are in the essential service industry like healthcare, pharmacy, food, sanitation. They can make sure that the childcare options are available to these essential workers like doctors, nurses, shopkeepers, pharmacists, and others. But of course, following strict guidelines as provided by CDC and other organizations. Employers can allow home-based work during this time where possible. They can offer flexible work options even during home-based work, such as staggered start and finish times, and they can allow staff to take paid family emergency leave, especially staff who are caring for family members who are very young or ill during this time. I just wanted to also maybe share slide number 17. In terms of how employers, and the slide I think will be shared with you later so you can have a look, how they can enable home-based work. The previous slide, please. Slide 17, yes. So they can enable access to online learning for their employees, and we provide several resources in the guide that you can look at in terms of how to enable online learning. And even in situations where connectivity is an issue, a lot of these resources can be adapted for offline use. And we have a note on connectivity and also screen time, managing screen time for children, also ensuring their online safety, because children are now spending a lot of time online. So how can you ensure their safety? So all that is included in the guide. At the same time, looking at parents and how to support their parenting skills. How can they talk to their children during this time? How can they have the skills that they can then pass on to their children during this time, and really manage parenting and work. And that also has an impact on mental health. So we have some ideas in terms of how companies can support their employees' mental and physical well-being during this time. Also providing financial support to cover costs of meals, because a lot of kids now are not going to daycare, where they used to have access to lunches and breakfasts, but now they have to be at home. So covering those costs of extra meals and extra distance learning tablets or books or materials can also go a long way. Offering emergency childcare, again, within the strict requirements of the government and international organizations in terms of what childcare support looks like. And protecting employees and their children is key. And one of the main ways in which companies can protect their employees is to curb misinformation. There is so much misinformation out there that is very, very harmful for individuals, for communities, families, businesses. If employers can take a step here and share regular updates, verified updates, they can really prevent a lot of miscommunication and misinformation during this time. Just very quickly, I also wanted to share last slide, which is 25, slide number 25. No matter what you choose to do as an employer, as I mentioned, this is very high level guidance. Your sector, your country, your city even will have different contexts. But one thread that connects everything is kindness and compassion and communication and understanding. During the crisis, it is just important to remember that not everything will go as planned, to give each other that space to deal with this. And often overworked and stressed out parents appreciate clear daily communication and with their employees, as well as kindness and understanding as they juggle these responsibilities. And knowing that they might not be able to deliver the same amount of work that they used to deliver when things were normal. So just cultivating a sense of security and sharing empathy and understanding can really help employers in terms of their business sustainability, and their employees in terms of retaining them. So when the crisis is averted, they are all back to work, and you retain your talent pool and continue building it. So I'll stop here, and we'll love to take questions. I rushed through it, but everything is available on the guide, in the guide online.
Thank you so much, Rudaba, for your presentation, very clear and with very practical tips for companies to implement. Now we'll give the floor to Vinita Paunikar. Vinita is the Vice President of Release Engineering and Release Management for Oracle Corp. So go ahead, Vinita.
Thank you, Diana. Let me go ahead and share my desktop. Once you see it, let me know if you can see my desktop. Do you see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to go in slideshow so you can see my slides properly. Do you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So let me get started. Sorry. Somehow, I don't know, it's going in slideshow mode, so I'm going to keep in this mode. Sorry about that. So thank you, Diana, and thank you, Rudaba, for a very nice presentation. I wanted to kind of share with you guys what Oracle is doing to handle current situation for our employees as well as for our customers. So the good thing for software development is thanks to technology, we are not as impacted as many of the industries which Diana talked about, because a lot of things can get done online from home. So we don't have that much impact, but this is question of time, as other industries are impacted because of this situation. And if this situation stays for a very long time, it's question of time that our business is going to get impacted. We are very aware of that, and we are very supportive of other industries also. And I'll talk about what we are doing for at least our industry. So internally, what Oracle has done for all the employees, first of all, our number one goal is to make sure our employees are safe. So what we have been doing is continuously publishing guidelines as to what employees should do and what not to do, and what sites to rely on. And because as one of you mentioned, like there is so much information available right now, so it's very important for employees to know which is the reliable information and where to seek information about the situation. So on a regular basis, our executive management send out guidelines to all the employees across the world. We have already implemented work for home guidelines for every employee across the world right now. Luckily, Oracle always had a flexible hours and work from home facilities for all the employees. But right now, all the employees are actually working from home, and visit to office is very, very restricted unless you're really, really required to go to work. You're allowed to go to work. Otherwise, it's pretty much mandatory for everybody to stay at home and take care of themselves and their families. All the work site, just in case people have to go to work, they are equipped with sanitizer, soap and water and whatnot. All the precautions are taken so that if someone visits the office, they are sanitized. uh, we are using Zoom for all our audio and visual meetings. And there is a help desk to make sure that all the employees who are working from home, again, across the world, are equipped with the state-of-the-art equipment so that they can carry out their work from home. We have improved quite a lot on our communication through emails, phones, and some guidelines, mentoring to employees and whatnot. So we have formalized all the email communications and all the communications to our employees. We have, while this situation was happening, we had already made offers to some people. So onboarding of these people was a challenge. So what we have done is we have shipped laptops to their home, so onboarding can happen, and people are not just like left in transit because they have left their previous job and they're about to join Oracle. So we have kind of made sure that they can come on board just staying at home. And maximum business is conducted online, mostly using Zoom, whether it's internal development or our customer support or sales, everything is happening online right now. Also, as we are doing more Zoom meetings and all, people are very respective of the people who are working remotely, and we're improving their communication with remote workers. Um, Also, just to help the situation, employees are encouraged to donate for COVID-19 cause, and Oracle is matching all the donations which employees are doing. Not only that, Oracle has floated a financial assistance program for the employees who are in financial crisis because of this situation. So Larry Ellison just sent out an email to all the employees yesterday, and also he has um, posted a small video about how Zoom has become an essential service for Oracle and companies around the world, and it enables the business and economics to continue. And he also mentioned that even after we come out of crisis, I think we can continue to use remote communications and Zoom meetings more effectively, and life will probably change even after this we come out of this situation. So if you guys want, you can watch this nice 1-minute video by our CTO and founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison. So what we are doing, we are actually making sure that we take leadership role in continuously assessing the situation around this crisis, and provide benefits, everyone's health and welfare as a priority to Oracle employees working from home. We have extensive online collaboration and capabilities to help ensure business continuity, and we are working tirelessly to help everyone stay safe, while at the same time we are continuing to serve our customers and our partners. There's more information available about what Oracle doing on this website. So there are a few things, Diana, you covered what we can do as a company to help not only just our own employees, but the community. And one of the things what we are offering is free online learning. This is not only for employees, this is for anybody, anybody in the world, which we actually floated on March 30th, 2020. And I'm quoting Raghu Vishwanathan, who is Vice President of Oracle Education. So what we are doing is we are any developers, any technical professional, architects, students, professors, we are offering 50 hours of free online training, because a lot of people have time at hand right now, and they can also do this certification exam. So while they have some time at hand, they can actually invest their hours in learning and also passing the certification exams, which can help them get the jobs in future or continue to have their jobs or whatever. So that is available, and anybody can enroll for this free certification. This is something which Oracle floated just to help anybody who wants to learn technology and continue to be in workforce. The other thing what we are offering, this is something Roberta actually touched about, free HR tool to help customers keep employees safe, and that is very important. So what we are offering is a free software, which is called Workforce Health and Safety Software, which is a solution on top of our Oracle Human Capital Management Cloud. So this model will help our customers manage key workspace health and safety issues and answer critical response questions. So this can be used not only by employer, but also by employees to report any health issues, and we can offer solutions, or we can offer help to our employees who are remote places. So that's something which is again offered for free for not only our own employees, but for customers as well. Okay. And this is one of my favorite one, what Oracle has released. So once this crisis situation happened, we actually put together a small set of team who, not small, actually it started with 5 people, but then it was a team of about 500 people. Within 1 week, we developed a software called COVID-19 therapeutic learning system. So what this system does is it allows all the doctors who are doing clinical trials of the drugs for this disease, they can actually make their data available through this system about whatever drugs they are administering, and basically this tool will do a massive analytics of the data which is entered, and can give doctors which are the most effective drugs in this situation. Because what we don't have right now is which exactly are the drugs we should be using to actually remedy this disease. And basically this system will help doctors to figure out which are the drugs which are most effective. This application was released about, I think, 2 to 3 weeks back, and it was unveiled at White House about 2 weeks back in the presence of Donald Trump. And if you want to take a demo of this application, it's available on our site. And it's available right now. It's available, I guess, in all of United States to use this. And I don't know if they have already made it available, but it will be available all over the world. And this is for free. Oracle has offered to use this application and enter their data, and then we can do all slice and dice and big data analytics on the data which is entered on this. That was my last slide. So I want to say thank you, everybody, and stay safe. And Oracle is doing everything possible for community, for employees, for our customers, for suppliers and partners. And I'm very, very confident we'll get out of this situation very quickly. Thank you so much, Diana.
Many, many thanks, Vinita, for this fantastic presentation. As you said, probably the digital industry is not one of the hardest hit right now, but if the crisis continues, you can lose your clients and affect your operations. So there are many, many things we can learn from your experience. Thank you so much. Now I'll give the floor to Arantxa Diaz-Lladó. She's the Director of Sustainable Innovation and Diversity for Telefónica. So Arantxa, now I will unmute you. Wait. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Diana. It's great. Thank you for the invitation. It's very good to be here and very interesting to hear all these presentations and share our experiences through this crisis. Let me introduce very briefly. I mean, I'm not going to be sharing a PowerPoint. I'm just going to be talking, but I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards. Let me first introduce a bit what Telefonica is very shortly, so you get an idea of how big we are and how we're managing this. I mean, we are the main provider of telecom services in Europe and Latin America. And so to give you an idea of our size, I mean, we have 120,000 employees. Our headquarters is in Spain, so we've been hit by the crisis quite early. And so many of the things I'm going to be talking about we've applied in Spain and we're applying elsewhere now, but we've started in Spain. Spain was the first country that we started working on this. Okay. Also, one previous, and I'm going to be talking on what I'm going to focus my presentation on talking on what's being done now during the crisis. Okay, but I think there's another debate that we would be happy to address later on in the time probably, and on what this I would say. But it'd be very interesting to really, I think we really in Telefonica, we believe that this crisis is somehow going to change how we relate to our main stakeholders. I mean, this was happening before, but I think this crisis is going to deepen this change, I mean, to our employees, to our clients, to society, that should be discussed, but this is more in the future. So for now, let's start by, let me move forward now to refer to what we are doing now and to what we're doing now in the crisis today. And our starting point here is to say that, I mean, our president, and he was very clear on this very early in the crisis, is that we know that telecom services at this point are a key issue in the crisis. And we're a key issue first because we are a critical sector of the economy. Secondly, because we are part of the solution to the crisis, and this is very important. And so this is to say that we are addressing, I mean, the things that we're doing them because we are serving society as a whole, not our clients only. Okay, and this is important to understand. And this is actually the reason why our president very early on in the crisis came out publicly and started taking measures very early, because he understood that we had to take this responsibility. We were a key agent in society as a company. This was what our responsibility to take it really. I mean, it was very important for us to take that. So the first thing we did, and I'll be addressing different issues, and mostly I'll be talking about employees, what we've done with our employees, but also I wanted to start by what's our business. And this was very important because our first task was to ensure that connectivity and our networks would work at full capacity. Okay, we had to make sure that our networks would hold during the crisis. And this, I'm going to be talking here in Spain because, I mean, to give you an idea of the magnitude of what we were facing, let me tell you that we've seen that the mobile traffic, for instance, has grown by 45% to what we had previous in the crisis. Fixed data has grown up by 30%. Apps such as WebEx and WhatsApp, etc. The use of these tools have gone up by 8 times, some up to 8 times. It's interesting, actually. I cannot show you now because I don't have it with me, but I have these graphics that show how traffic went up, and you can see the only time during the day when traffic goes down is at 8 p.m. because that's the time in Spain when everyone comes out and clap and there's this initiative to clap for all sanitary and health systems. And it's interesting that you see this coming down of the curve every day at 8 p.m. exactly, and the rest of the day it's really, really very high up. Okay, all the traffic is very high up. So this has been an incredibly difficult test for our networks, you know, and this is what we've seen. I mean, we've invested heavily in deployment of fiber to the home and 4G deployments, and this has and now we've seen, you know, the rewards of doing this in the past, right? So this has been the first task to ensure connectivity throughout the crisis. Okay. Well, the second thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll be a bit longer in this, is about our employees. Because, I mean, it's actually challenging. Imagine from one day to the other, you have to send 120,000 employees to work from home. And well, the advantage here, I would say, was that we were already, for many years, I mean, I'd say more heavily in the last 2 years, we were already working to promote remote working. So we've already gone through this process a little bit. So it was easier to start sending our employees home. So it was a really big challenge. Okay, so it's been it's interesting because we've been learning and adapting, and we've had to do it really quickly. Okay, and this is, I think, the first thing the first lesson I would say we've learned is that you need to adapt and be extremely flexible and be very quick in doing so. So the first thing we had to address was, I would say, I mean, and I'm sure every company here has had to address the same thing. It's all the logistics. I mean, as I said, we were somehow prepared because we had the digital tools, for instance, to work from home. But now today we have 90 to 95% of our employees working from home, which is huge. Okay, so I mean, we had the digital tools and skills, but it was not enough. We had to teach these employees that were not used to using all of these tools. We need to teach them how to use them, right? So that's been a challenge to really ensure that everyone, these 95% of employees that are working from home, know how to use all the digital tools that we already had. Also, we had to, another thing that was interesting is that before this happened, we had analyzed each area's needs in terms of working at home. Was it possible to work at home in every area of the company? And interestingly enough, in our analysis before, we found some areas that couldn't work from home, and we've had to reconsider that option now. And for instance, I would say like call centers. Our call centers, we thought that we couldn't make people work from home, and now we've reconsidered that, and they are actually working from home, and it's actually working very well. So you have to reconsider your options when this happens, right? The second thing we learned in this analysis of areas needs, we had to decide to reassign some key areas. So some people some areas were very heavily, they have a heavy workload, and we didn't have enough people, so we've had to reassign some other people, some employees, to do things that they were not doing before. So there's been some training also, and reskilling and ensuring that we can tackle all these employees can tackle these new activities that they were not doing before. Okay, so that's been an interesting thing, and interesting how to say, like, learning from this crisis. And another thing that's interesting is that we had some areas were not able to, I mean, they were not cannot be worked remotely. So we focus on these areas. They are home, and there's some people, these people are home, they don't have work to do. But we had this online learning platform, training platform that was working very well. But now we've put it on top of our priorities, and many people are using this time to learn new things, to do this reskilling that was being done in the company already, and they're learning on how to use some digital tools, but they're learning things that were not thought of before, such as things as capabilities of big data, interesting things, and that's happening. We're taking much, I mean, some employees are taking this time really to learn things and reskill and build some new skills that they didn't have before. That's another opportunity that I say that has been very important. And this actually is, for now, I mean, in Spain now, we've been confined for 5 weeks already. So it's been 5 weeks at home, yeah. And this has been working very well for I mean, we're quite surprised actually to see how things are working, and productivity hasn't dropped, we think, and we're doing service that I'll be talking about, but it's interesting. We believe things are working so far, okay? Well, the second thing that we focus, I mean, once we've tackled all these logistics, which are quite difficult and important to tackle, we've also things that we're doing that could, I think, bring some ideas to the rest of the participants of the conference. An important thing is that we need to recognize and give credit to what employees are doing, to employees' efforts, and that's we've used our internal communication tools very heavily with employee involvement, interviews. I mean, it's important that employees feel that we as a company are behind and that they are being rewarded. We give credit what they're doing and what they're suffering, what they're going through. So that's another thing that we've put a lot of effort on, to really recognize the work and the effort of our employees. Then in this thing, actually, it's very important to have our top management involvement. And that has been actually key from the beginning of the crisis. We had our president coming out, talking directly to employees in open conferences, answering questions. And we have him speaking to us once a week at least. And that's only our global president, but then you have the president of each country also participating and really giving feedback to employees, giving feedback on what's going on in the world, on what's going on Telefonica, how we're tackling this crisis, how results are going, what actions are we taking to help in society, etc. So top management involvement is really, I think, a key issue that needs to be addressed. Okay, and that's worked very nicely with us. And in that sense, also another lesson from this crisis for us has been the importance of communication, of internal communication tools. And in here, we need to be careful because at one point we need to measure well how much you communicate, and there's so much going on in the world, and so much going on in the company, and so many things to communicate and to learn about that. Sometimes it can be a bit heavy, so you need to really measure well how you communicate with your employees. And it's interesting also how this has evolved through these weeks in confinement, because we started first, our communicators had to do more with logistics. I mean, you have everything you need to have to work remotely. How is it working with your boss? Is he communicating with you? How are you feeling? I mean, are you being able to continue with the projects you had on top of the table? So it was more, I'd say, like a communication based on logistics, on how things were going. The second part has been actually more, and I think it's been mentioned previously in the presentation. It was more about ensuring engagement, ensuring trust, ensuring hope, ensuring that employees understand that the company is helping them. The company, we need to ensure that there's a sense of union in the company. And I think we've really moved forward from these more logistic type of communications to more like unity communication. And this actually has been very important with our top management involvement. Okay, and then the third thing with the third part of the communication that I'd say has been quite that I believe has worked quite well actually is all that has to do with well-being initiatives, really giving support, psychological support to our employees. And even, for instance, we're just organizing, and this has raised a lot of interest among our employees. We've launched this initiative we have this platform called Dialogando, which talks about responsible use of technology, and it's very much based on families and children use of technology, children and young people use of technology. And we've launched this initiative.
We have one more minute, Arantxa.
Yeah. Okay, I'm almost about to finish. Well, this platform we're organizing next week actually this open dialogue with the psychologists that's very competent and interesting, to really have the families of our employees being able to connect and ask questions directly to these psychologists to understand how life at home is working, how the work-life balance is working, how they're managing children's use of technology, etc. So that's and that's actually raised a lot of interest from our employees, which means that that's a problem they're facing. Okay, and related to that problem, I think another lesson we've learned and that we're tackling actually is like you need to understand what's going on with your employees, with your employees. I mean, we do online surveys, and again, they've gone from more logistical surveys to more I'd say emotional issues or belonging issues, right? And here it's interesting to understand the problems they're facing in their home, and there's a gender perspective in this, and this is important to really understand, because as we say, like women face many times face a higher burden of domestic work. Okay, so I'd say we don't have much time, but another issue we're working on, and this is another conference, I would say, but this is important to work on also, is prepare for the coming back. And this is an important issue too, because there's lots of logistic work to do, I mean, we're going to do it gradually, but how do you manage all this? And we need to understand that confinement is not the same thing as remote working, because it's not the same thing. I mean, it will be a different, we need to tackle it differently, right? So there's this logistics behind, but also this, we need to, as I was saying at the beginning, I think things are going to change radically, and we need to think of the corporate culture. I mean, we may be rethinking new ways of working. We need to rethink new ways of new leaderships and new competencies, new skills, ensure engagement. So there's going to be lots of questions to be tackled in the coming future. So yeah, I think this is a very open and interesting debate.
Thank you so much, Arantxa. There are so many things, resonating in my mind. But something that caught my attention is that, you're reassessing what are those positions that originally you thought were unable to work from home,
Yeah.
And in that sense, how you're going to adapt your own business model. I think that's something to really think of and reflect on the future. Now, I will pass the floor to Aneta Petrovska. Aneta is the head of Human Resources and Organization for EVN Macedonia. So Aneta, I will open your mic. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to exchange our experience, EVN experience in dealing with the COVID crisis. Just a bit of chronology. We had the first cases at the end of February, and we had special emergency situation, state of emergency adopted on national level starting from 18th of March, and it will be for 1 month, and it will be prolonged for 1 more month. Regarding the childcare that was mentioned at the beginning, the government adopted measures because the kindergarten, daycare and schools are closed in the whole country from 11th of March. And there is the opportunity for employees to use paid leave in order to take care of the childcare situation and homeschooling now, as the schools have adopted remote and online learning for the children. Most probably the situation will stay like that until the end of the year. So the working parents have to deal also, in addition to the challenges of working remotely, also in the at the home regarding the taking care of their children. So as a measure on state level, the government adopted paid leave for parents for children up to 10 years of age. One of the parents is free from work obligations. Pregnant employees are also at home, and employees with certain chronic illnesses which are listed by the government. We have 10% of our workforce which is absent on this basis at the moment. And regarding, because we tackled also the issue of gender equality and children, we have half of men or fathers which are using this opportunity for taking care of children up to 10 years. And so we are more or less equal in that regard. So we took measures because the situation developed rapidly overnight in our country. We ensured measures in order to prepare for various scenarios, to monitor the development and to keep risk of infection of our employees during working time to absolute minimum. We have, as a measure, we took several, but I will also present some of them. Some of them will be repeated with Telefonica. We have amended the workforce schedule for administrative staff. So we are energy company, so around 40 to 50% of our employees work in offices, but half of our employees work on field. So it's not possible for the technicians to work from home. So they continue working, but their exposure to customers and colleagues is lower. We've amended the workforce schedule of administrative staff for work on site in our offices. And we have redistributed work among active staff, because now we organized the work in administration in 2 teams. So we split it, each department and each team into each department into groups, and one of the group is each group is coming 3 days per week in the offices maximum, not more, and up to 5 days some of them are working from home. So there has been a change in team dynamics, teamwork, and collaboration. There has been a deployment of front office staff to other tasks because all front offices are closed. We had to reset expectations regarding employees and work overnight. And what we did also in order to more or less encourage absenteeism was to prompt use on annual leave entitlement or holiday on full pay. Other measure, in addition to amending workforce schedule, was the relocation of employees in offices in their cities. So we have from whole country employees who are coming, who are traveling for work. So we had made an analysis and offered them to work in the cities in which they live in. By that, we're reducing commuting needs. And for the other employees are putting company car fleet at the disposal in order to have safe traveling to work. Remote work is something that is mentioned a lot now regarding the crisis. Our legal requirements did not allow remote work until COVID. And after COVID outbreak and declaring state of emergency on national level, the government adopted a measure for work from home. And we also had a fast track remote work policy rollout on national level with broad coverage of administrative workers. Regarding criteria and equity, which employees get to work from home and which are not, we based it as a criteria based on the position of the employee, and we have unified approach based on the position and the department, and it is approved in that way. We had also to deal with some legal and contractual considerations for home working, because I said there is not a regulation that is or practices. Some of the IT companies are doing it, but it's not legally grounded or grounded in the labor law. We had to tackle with health and safety issues for remote workers, IT and information security topics. Also, was mentioned before, there was a big challenge how to enable that the employees in office and home feel connected both among themselves, with the company and with the management. And also what is interesting out of the remote work policy is that we started more to monitor productivity versus hours spent working. Very essential was also said is the top management and the CEO involvement in dealing with the COVID situation. We have extensive internal and external communication through many channels. Every group receives targeted updates and communication. We had a video address from our CEO to all employees. And there is also an ongoing communication between CEO and top management and middle and management regarding the measures taken and individual approach in dealing in different areas. As I said before, there were many topics which are connected with equity and equality. Also, today I read from the European Labor Trade Union some communication regarding social dialogue and social equality in dealing with fast outcry for digitalization. That the digitalization should be done taking into consideration also the employees' rights, so it should also be tackled. We are also now talking about keeping the business running, and redesigning work, redesigning training, redesigning processes. But we will have to also have an open dialogue with the trade unions and what does it mean for the existing employees and how they will be affected. And again, the topic on gender, will women be discriminated, or will they have equal opportunities, and there will be gender equity in dealing with this redistribution and redesign of jobs and business models. We have as a company providing critical infrastructure. So we had also many challenges in dealing with the lockdown, which is from 4 p.m. until 5 a.m. on the next day and during weekend. Now for Easter, it will be also a complete lockdown on the state level, while our employees will have special permits to work in order to, if necessary, provide secure and reliable electricity supply to the whole country. Regarding social dialogue, I also want to point out that we are in constant communication with the trade union, both on branch level and on level of the company. And so far, we have retained the full workforce and salaries and benefits for all employees. And we haven't opened any discussion about reducing any of their rights. As a company,
Aneta, sorry, you have 1 minute.
Okay, so some future challenges that we can also discuss in the next round is how to assess the transferable skills, how to redesign working places, job position, while enabling gender equity, how to tackle the learning and development for workforce which is working remotely, how to foster effective collaboration and increase trust among the employees and management. Also, ethical principles in dealing with the situation, as well as dealing with employee health, managing stress and mental health. We have been witnesses of increased anxiety and stress related conditions in the past period, and we should also address that in the next period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aneta. There are many measures that you have put in place, and what we can see is that you're putting people at the center of all your decisions, and I think that's remarkable. Thank you so much. Now I would like to give the floor to Sophia. Sophia, if you're there, and if you can open your, sorry, but I think you can't. Okay. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes, we can see you.
Great. Hi, Diana.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce you. Sophia is the co-founder and director of AfriPads. Thank you so much for being here. So go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Diana, if you have those slides and you're able to show them, that would be great. But if not, I will just talk through. So thank you so much.
Just a second, but.
Great. So as Diana said, I'm the director of AfriPads, and I'm really pleased to be able to share some of the perspectives and experiences of an SME that's operating in the social enterprise field, and specifically operating in the Global South. We are a social business and the leading manufacturer of reusable sanitary pads across Africa. And reusable sanitary pads are a low-tech innovation, and they offer a more sustainable and cost-effective solution for the millions of women who struggle to find a dignified and effective way of managing their monthly periods. And we have our operational headquarters and a manufacturing facility in Uganda, but we're operating across Africa. So that will be the perspective that I will share today. Now, to move to the next slide, our work centers around partnerships, and we do that primarily with development and humanitarian sector partners. And our work is in the gender, education, water and sanitation, and also humanitarian relief sectors. And at a time like this, something as mundane as a monthly period seems like a rather small topic to be discussing, or at minimum, like a less urgent priority. And that's especially when we think about it in comparison to urgent needs for PPE, like masks and other essential healthcare resources. But the reality is that periods do not pause for a pandemic. And accordingly, right now, women and girls around the world have a basic need and a basic right to manage their periods with dignity and efficacy, and that is in jeopardy. And this is truly a gendered challenge when we think about what this means for the millions of women and girls around the world, whether in formal employment or informal employment, or simply those who are at home taking care of their families at this time. So in normal, let's say pre-COVID times, there are millions of women and girls who regularly lack the ability to manage their periods in a safe way. And so this is really just escalating that to a whole new level. We're seeing disruptions in the availability of menstrual products, increases in the costs of menstrual products, both of those largely due to supply chain lags and gaps. Social distancing and the restrictions that is creating around mobility, and in some countries facing lockdown, mean that it's having a huge impact on the ability of women and girls to even reach the shops and the kiosks where the BOP typically access menstrual products. And in humanitarian settings, what we're seeing is that the realities of the pandemic are affecting the ability for relief organizations to distribute the essential goods that they normally provide, and those include menstrual products. So more than ever, as an SME working in Africa, we feel that it's really essential for our manufacturing to continue, for our distributions and partnerships to keep going, to ensure that this really uniquely gendered need of women and girls can be met. And I think it's also interesting to point out that there are also the menstrual needs of healthcare workers and the menstrual needs of women and girls who are in either quarantine that's institutional quarantine, as we're seeing in countries like Uganda, or self-quarantine or simply self-isolation at this time. So if we can move to the next slide. As a company, we have our headquarters in Uganda, and the situation there is that there are actually less than 50 cases and no deaths at this time. However, the government is taking strict precautions and measures, and those started in March. And 2 weeks ago, that escalated to a strict national lockdown. And just yesterday, that lockdown has been extended for an additional 3 weeks. And that lockdown is widespread and comprehensive. There is a curfew. There are very strict limitations on transportation and mobility, and strict rules as well for factories and providers of essential goods and services that are allowed to continue operating at this time. And we are no exception to the SMEs out there who are facing enormous challenges as a result of this pandemic. We are seeing issues with borders, having, let's say, intermittent access and closures. We are seeing an impact on our supply chain, reductions in sales, and I'd say an impact in our production levels as a result of the lockdown. And to come back to how Diana opened this webinar, is that she emphasized that women are disproportionately affected in times like this. And that is absolutely the case in our factory. Now, we have deliberately put our factory in a rural part of Uganda, where as part of our impact model, we believe it's important to create access to manufacturing and formal sector employment. But these women are naturally much more, let's say, vulnerable to the risks and the interruptions of the business at this time. Now, for many of our female employees, we have about 200, of whom 90% are female. They are the breadwinners in their families and at the household level. And given the closure of schools and the limited access to work, they're also experiencing that double burden of care. As well, women and girls who are living at the bottom of the pyramid are less able to purchase in bulk, less able to prepare to survive through a period of home quarantining or home isolation, given their socioeconomic status, which means that they're also at increased risk of exposure to the virus due to the frequency at which they need to leave the home to access those basic health needs. And at work, the lockdown that is imposed in Uganda right now is presenting extreme challenges in terms of getting to and from work, finding alternative safe healthcare for their children, as was also raised earlier in this discussion, and the limited safety nets that exist for them. They have limited savings to fall back on, and there is not much when it comes to government relief. So as a company, we've had to respond very quickly. Our number one priority has been to keep our team safe and to make sure that they have the information and the resources that they need to understand the pandemic and how to keep themselves, their families, and their communities safe, and to prevent the spread of the virus. Now, for many, this information is so important because separating myths from facts and truly understanding how the disease and how the virus is spread is essential in their ability to protect themselves. So this has been core. Now, prior to the lockdown, we did implement work from home for all non-essential staff. We implemented health and safety guidelines and developed and had those in place, and we rolled those out for the skeleton staff who were still working at our central office in the capital city of Kampala. And that included zero access to the office for non-staff and a travel ban for all staff. Now at the factory, initially, we were able to keep producing, and so we immediately implemented strict health and safety measures in line with the Ministry of Health's guidelines. So the Ministry of Health in Uganda implemented an SOP, and that includes routine temperature checks and health checks of all employees at fixed times, enhanced cleaning and sanitation measures, and other such restrictions and let's say actions to make sure that the factory workers remain safe through this time. On our own, we also developed customized education materials that we have rolled out in local language, both in print and audio, to ensure that the team can really understand. So again, those are audio recordings that are played at multiple intervals throughout the day. Now, everything is happening quite fast in Uganda. A lockdown was instituted, and when that did happen, there was not even a 24-hour notice period. And at that time, the government required that all factory workers have to sleep on site, which is something that we were not set up for at that time. And given the very quick rollout of that decision, it led to a 2-week shutdown of our factory. And this, has implications on us as a company in terms of production days and our ability to deliver the orders that we have, but it also has a profound impact on our employees who earn when they're working. And so we are actually having to really, I'd say, be creative and like all companies, find the ways that we need to pivot and respond. And so we have actually set up temporary housing now at the factory. We've spent the past 2 weeks preparing for that. And our team is now in the process of returning to work. And I would say it really shows just an unprecedented level of commitment from a team of largely female workers who have families at home, who are not currently in school, and in a culture where women are typically not able to abscond, let's say, from their household family duties, that their families are supporting them and their decision to return to work at this time, and for us to be able to protect and preserve their livelihoods. And so this is what's happening at the moment. We expect our factory will be reopened within the next couple of days, again, operating very strictly in line with government protocols to keep employees safe and to keep the virus from spreading. And so there is a huge amount of flexibility, a huge amount of empathy that is having to go into the way that we are responding to the crisis. The situation for everyone is changing on a daily basis. And what is so important in the work that we do is a very strong gender lens in how we respond and protect our team as the very fragile socioeconomic ecosystem that exists in places like where we work and operate is at even more risk at a time like this. And so being able to preserve the livelihoods of our team, keep our factory working, and to continue providing menstrual products, which are, again, seemingly insignificant at a time like this, but simultaneously paramount to women's dignity and basic health. So as we
Sophia,
look,
sorry, you just have 1 more minute.
perfect, thank you. So I think that this is the reality. It's very challenging times for small private sector companies, especially ones who have a strong social impact focus to their work. So we are doing everything that we can to ensure that our factory keeps operating, as this is really what we need to do to sustain both our operations, the livelihood of our teams, and to reach this basic need of women and girls across Africa, because periods simply do not stop for pandemics. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you so much for sharing all your challenges and the struggles you're dealing with right now due to the pandemic. Something that resonates in my mind is that you're doing everything to come back to work as soon as you can, and the temporary, mechanisms that you will have there to host your workers. That's something very interesting. The other thing that I find really challenging is since kids are out of school, what are the childcare solutions that you're trying to provide to address those needs of women? So thank you so much. And now I would like to open the floor for an open conversation. We don't have much time, but I would like to open this opportunity to reflect on the challenges that you're dealing with right now, and how do you think the COVID-19 crisis will cause a permanent shift or change in your business model? What are the things that you are trying to adjust? How do you envision the future? Because things probably will never be the same. So what are the things that you're envisioning will be the key changes you will experience in the future, when we come back to normal again? So if you want to jump in, please do. I have opened the mics to everyone, to Vinita, to Sofia, to Aneta.
So
to
Diana,
Arantxa.
I can go.
Sure,
maybe.
go ahead, Vinita.
So even after this crisis is over, I think the life will not be same. In a way, in some extent, I would say it will be positive, because in our industry, we do have people who work from home, especially for women and all. We make a lot of concession because we know they have to take care of kids and families and all. So we have flexible hours, and we allow people to work from home under normal circumstances also. But one of the challenge what these people have who are working from home is when there are a bunch of people sitting in the conference room, in the meetings, usually people in the conference room, they hijack the meetings and they don't allow remote people to even talk. So now, because everybody is remote, we understand what the situation they go through who are remote. And now we are very respectful about the fact that there are some people on the phone and we need to be patient and listen to them. I think because we all are going through that experience, when we come back, I think we would be more respectful to the people and more respectful about how we should conduct these meetings, and help people more and more work from home. Because another thing, I know there are a lot of people who see impact of working from home, but frankly, in some of our situations, my people are telling me they are in fact are more effective working from home, because not only they can stretch their day in the morning and evenings, but also they are saving a lot of time, especially in Bay Area, in traveling. So like I personally spend more than 2 hours in just commute. My morning commute is about more than 1 hour, evening commute is more than 1 hour. I'm giving actually 2.5 hours extra for doing a work, and a lot of people are finding same thing, they're saving a lot of time. So in a way, I think we will open up working from home more and more, even after coming back from situation, which will help people, and also it will improve productivity, because in many cases, especially people who don't have kids at home, their productivity has increased actually working from home. So I would say we would look at business a little bit differently. And also we have figured out like how these online resources are so helpful, like Zoom and all, So we're going to make use of online resources more and more and help environment and help this situation. I would say that. Yeah.
Sure. Anyone else? Any idea, Sophia or Annette? Arantxa?
Yes, it was not mentioned the apprenticeships and work-based learning in COVID era. We are involved in work-based learning arrangements with with schools in the country, and these students have one portion of their learning spent in our company. So how will we train the future workforce or students for instance, in the energy sector, where it's not possible to for everything to be done online, and we need some face-to-face interaction for the practical work. So apprenticeships, which are also challenges in the gender equality agenda, where we had issues in attracting girls because the stereotypes can be also reinforced because of lack of direct communication. We had several measures, but mostly where we interact directly with people, and some of the parents are not very digitally fluent. So it is how to attract more girls in the STEM area, and how to promote the apprenticeships and work-based learning in future.
Okay, really good. Sophia, any word?
Yeah, I would just say, speaking from the side of manufacturing, an industry where it is very difficult to implement or impossible to implement work from home, I think that a key takeaway from this experience has really been the fragility of our teams, and especially of women at this time. And so I think it's really a call to action for companies like ourselves, whether smaller to medium-sized social enterprises or larger size, commercial industries, to really be putting in place the safety nets that they need for their employees. Whether that's a rainy day fund, where funds are going to support their employees in a time like this, when there are these unprecedented moments in history, or more structural, ongoing measures to keep your team safe. And on our side, for example, that includes health insurance for our employees, changing the ways that we're paying people, as they don't necessarily have access to ATMs, banks, and whatnot in these times. So paying in cash, being able to be flexible, to think out of the box, to respond quickly, and to really think about just how vulnerable women and girls are in times like this, and what that means as a business, and how you can put those measures in place to go the extra mile and keep them safe.
Okay, thank you, Arantxa. Any final thought?
Yeah, actually picking up from what Sophia was heading, I totally agree. I actually think it's a time to speak about human rights. Really, this has posed a challenge. This crisis has posed a challenge into human rights. I need to think issues such as labor conditions and non-discrimination issues, privacy, for instance, privacy and security, access to information, not leaving anyone behind. So I think this is really the time to speak deeply on how this is affecting human rights, and how are we companies going to address these issues. So yeah.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much for the reflections. I think that, as I said before, this is disrupting our lives, but it will change. It will have deep transformations in the way we live. And I think that probably one of the most important things are the emotional effects the whole situation is having, from the health perspective, from the work perspective, from the challenges juggling with all work responsibilities, family responsibilities, etc. So this has a very, very high emotional charge that it's affecting people at a deep level. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your challenges, your learnings. I think this is work in progress. We all are learning from this and trying to do the best. So for our closing remarks, now I will give the floor to Luciana Trindade de Aguiar. She's the head of Business Call to Action at UNDP. So Luciana, go ahead.
So I have the challenge of wrapping up this conversation, but for me, the most important message, not only COVID crisis is changing the way, but it's changed the way how we do business. So for the many points that the speakers brought to this discussion, and they are very interesting, all of them, we can see not only the need for the adoption of a gender lens, but also the necessity of using technology transformation, new technologies, revising procedures and mainly the legal procedures, new ways of working and new ways of interacting with collaborators, adopting the right tools, communicating properly, new parameters to meet access and provide innovative financial mechanisms. There are 2 points that I'd like to bring specifically because it's very closely related to the way that with the companies that are implementing inclusive business models, that has to do with increasing business resilience and adopting new models. And more than this, strengthening business connections with society through their core business. So it's no longer social responsibility, but it's part of the business, the way we do business. And what calls our attention in Business Call to Action is the fact that the COVID crisis will in fact transform inclusive business models into a very dominant business. And it's very clear about the examples and that Sophia brought in developing her business model in Africa with AfriPads. What we see in inclusive business is that some our companies are of course facing a very challenging time, but at the same time and also struggling with their business continuity. But we also find that inclusive business models in general are very well suited to respond to the COVID crisis. Because these are business models that are quite resilient, they navigate in very challenging markets, and they succeed in difficult conditions. So, and at the same time, they have to keep low-income community part of their core business activities. So it's a huge challenge. And what, as Sophia has stressed, is not only the fragility of those living at the base of the pyramid, as they are much more impacted by the crisis, but also the fact that nearly 60% of women around the world work in informal, those that are marked a huge set of challenges, not only related to their working conditions, limited welfare safety nets, lack of mechanisms, savings, insurance, but they are also unable to prepare themselves for the lockdowns, and they have very specific living conditions that aggravate their health problem, some health problems, and sometimes prevent. So these vulnerabilities really require business to take stronger action in order to adequate and to relate in a different way with their employees, business partners, and clients, and adapt accordingly to their characteristics and needs. So not only Sophia brought how has shown how we can maintain, a business can maintain their commitments to empowering, as we have also heard this from Telefonica, Oracle, and from the other partners at her. But also there are interesting business models, and I'd like to bring this up, is the incredible capacity that the private sector has in innovating and adapting according to the circumstances, and being able, in fact, to move forward and respond phase. So in different ways, we are dealing with this, and there are some positive examples of this. But from the functions that we're having with the companies that are part of BCTA and networks, and also from the presentations that we saw here today, what I see is that the companies they are responding to this unprecedented challenge by communicating and collaborating. So collaboration is the key message that we can see from the companies, and particularly collaborating not only with their employees, with each other, but also with the national governments. So we've seen in different markets very interesting models of this cooperation. Not only some companies that we have in our network that are IT solutions to link women health providers with underserved communities, but also providing services on telehealth. And some of them also helping or preventing supply chain disruptions that are so important for the big companies as well as for the micro and small entities. So what we've members is the fact that this is an interesting timing for inclusive business models, and they are in fact struggling to survive, but at the same time identifying new opportunities to move forward. So what I've heard today from the really reinforces this vision that the companies are searching for new opportunities and new ways to implement their business, and also to reestablish or establish a very strong dialogue with society. So this is from my side, Diana.
Thank you so much, Luciana. Thank you so much, because you wrapped up in a very concise and intelligent way all the discussions we had today. I just want to thank you all these fantastic speakers for taking the time, for sharing, as I said before, their struggles, the challenges, the learnings, the innovations. I think that we have a lot of inspiration here. And I think it's critical when we discuss about, overcoming this crisis, we need to bring more solidarity, collaboration, transfer of knowledge, and bring the capacities of the private sector is absolutely critical. So thank you very much. And thank you for all the audience for joining us today. Please have a very good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.